Welcome back, everybody. I just want to preface this video just with a little disclaimer. I've had quite a few comments noting the fact that I'm using an Australian voiceover. It is my own voice. I brought my family over to New Zealand beginning of 1996, so we've all been here for almost 30 years now. So yeah, just to let everybody know, this is actually me and my own voice. Yeah, when I was part of the unit, my nickname in the teams was Soti, and those of you that are South African will know exactly what that means. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so let's get into this. Koevoet, also known as Ops K. To the insurgents of Plan, or the People's Liberation Army of Namibia, they were the murder unit. To the South African generals, they were the most ruthless, effective counter-insurgency tool in the entire border war arsenal. But this unit didn't just appear out of thin air in their Vumberland bush. It was engineered. It was the product of a cold calculation by men like General Hans Dreyer, who realized that standard police work wouldn't stop an insurgency, and standard military tactics were too slow for guerrilla warfare. To create Koevoet, the apartheid security apparatus had to do something untested. They had to merge two completely different worlds. The unit was forged in two distinct crucibles, thousands of kilometers apart. One was a rocky, formal police college in the heart of South Africa. The other was a repurposed labour depot on the edge of the scorching Namibian frontier. This is the tale of two camps, Maleoskop and Wanella. For the white personnel, the team leaders, the warrant officers, the men who would command the Zulu teams, the journey began at a place called Maleoskop. Located near Groblersdal in South Africa, this was the primary counter-insurgency training centre for the South African police. Maleoskop was structured. It was about doctrine and discipline. Most of the men arriving here were already policemen, some from the security branch, others from Special Task Force. Some were hardened veterans of the Rhodesian War, bringing the dark arts of the Selous Scouts with them. The training here was technical. If you were going to lead a Koevoet team, you didn't need to learn how to track a faint spoor over hard ground. You had specialists for that. You needed to learn how to manage chaos. They were trained in heavy weaponry not usually issued to police. They learned the complex radio protocols to talk to Alouette gunships screaming in just above the treetops. Crucially, they learned to drive the Casspir. They had to master these 16-ton beasts, learning how to handle them not on roads but while window bashing through the dense Mopani forests at speed during a contact. Maleoskop built the skeleton of the unit, the command structure, the firepower and the mechanized mobility. But a skeleton needs muscle and eyes. 2,000 kilometers to the northwest, on the very edge of the operational area in Ondangwa, lay the second camp. It was known as Wanella. The name itself was an echo of the past. Wanella was the local pronunciation for the WNLA, the Witwatersrand Native Labour Association. Before the war, this was a processing depot for migrant labourers heading to the gold mines. It was a place of transit, dust and waiting. The security police, under men like Captain Willem Schoen, repurposed it into a boot camp for the black component of Koevoet, the Special Constables. The recruits here were different. Many were drawn from the Ovambo Home Guard, but the most valuable among them were the turned insurgents, captured SWAPO fighters facing a choice between prison, death or switching sides. Training at Wanella was brutal and basic. There were no classrooms with overhead projectors here. While Maleoskop trainees trained on the R4, the R1 and other weapons, Wanella trainees often drilled with captured AK-47s, the weapon of the enemy. They didn't need to be taught how to survive in the bush. It was their backyard. They were natural trackers, possessing a skill set that no white instructor from Pretoria could teach. Their training was about endurance, aggression, and learning the specific debussing drills to erupt from a moving Casspir the moment tracks were spotted or a contact was hit. Two camps, two different worlds. One white, highly technical and steeped in apartheid ideology. The other black, locally rooted and instinctively skilled in bushcraft. The genius and the ruthlessness of Koevoet was the synthesis of these two camps. When a young white lieutenant fresh from Maleoskop arrived at Oshikari, he was assigned a team of veterans from Wanella. He was technically in charge, but his life depended on their eyes. The white officer provided the air support, the heavy caliber cover fire, and the direct line to Pretoria. The black trackers provided the intelligence, the spoor, and the ability to close with the enemy. It was a forced marriage, forged in the violence of the border. But once these Zulu teams left the base, The segregation of the training camps dissolved into the pragmatic reality of survival. They became a singular, devastating, effective hunting pack. On a personal note, there's a reality to Koevoet that the history books rarely capture. As a white Casspir commander, you arrived with your rank and your training from Maleoskop, but the moment you crossed the wire at the base, you were under a different kind of trial. You were being vetted, not by the colonels, but by the trackers. Those men, the Avambas who lived by the spoor, they were the true judges. They knew that in a contact, a second's worth of hesitation or a flicker of weakness from the man in the commander's seat meant death for everybody in the hull. If you didn't have the stomach for it, or if you lacked the resolve to make the hard calls under fire, they would have you sent back to the States, on their say-so. They wouldn't work with a liability. You had to earn your place at the front of that car every day. And in that earning, something happened that the rest of the world at the time couldn't understand. Once we were out there, beyond the fences, apartheid didn't exist. There was no white or black in the bush, there was only the team. We ate from the same pots, we slept under the same stars, and we washed in the same muddy waterholes. We relied on each other with a level of absolute trust that few people ever experience. When the lead started flying, you didn't see race. You saw a brother who had your back and whose back you were sworn to protect. And that's why the losses hit so hard. When a man went down, it was gut-wrenching. It didn't matter if he was a tracker from Koevoet or a sergeant from Pretoria. Watching your brothers suffer, watching them bleed and lose their lives in that white sand, it leaves a mark in your soul that never fades. We weren't just a unit, we were a single organism. And when you lose a part of yourself like that, the pain is universal. If you want to know more about the specific tactics these teams used once they hit the ground, check out my previous video on how Koevoet tracked insurgents in the bush. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Subscribe and comment. I'd love to read your comments. Thanks so much, everybody.